This is an FOU Studios podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GXP, the Geek Experience podcast. It's time to level up today with your daily dose of Geek XP. As always, I'm your host, Peter the Geek. With me today, I have GMJC.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? Good to be here.
I also have Brittles with us again, our local fantasy and Harry Potter aficionado.
What's up?
Our guest today is very exciting. I cannot wait to make him my best friend ever. He's a game programmer, he's a teacher, he's a bouncer, he's a stuntman, he plays music. He has had an internationally touring dance show at one point. He does everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Brad Macdonald.
Woo! Hello, everybody.
All right, so please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh boy. Okay, where to start? I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Wait, that's the name of the town.
That's the name.
Have you never heard of Kalamazoo? I guess-
Kalamazoo.
I'm from Wisconsin, so I guess I've heard of it enough times.
You're
Yeah.
in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm from
amazing.
Wapakoneta, Ohio.
You're from Ohio?
Yeah.
Where?
Wapakoneta.
Wapakoneta?
Wapakoneta, Ohio.
I think I have the wrong emphasis. Wapakoneta.
Gesundheit to
Yes.
There we
everyone
go.
here.
All right.
Wapakoneta, Kalamazoo.
This is great.
Seldom.
Oconomowoc.
See, this
Where
is what
are
I
you
did.
from,
I
JC?
deflected the conversation away from me to everybody else. This is actually my comfort zone, is talking about other people.
So everyone's got interesting. I'm Selden. That's the name of my town. That's all I've got going for me.
So Brad, tell us more about yourself.
Right. Okay, yeah, I'm, let's see, I'll just start in the present time.
Please, yeah.
I'm a professor over at Parsons School of Design, an MFA and BFA program called Design and Technology, where when I try to describe it to people, I usually, I can't. I'm unable to do it because the students come from all around the world, and we just basically help them figure out how to build whatever it is they want to build. It could be art installations, video games. It could be they might do user interaction, user experience design.
Okay.
And a lot of the classes I teach there are about how to facilitate that. How can they make the things they want to make better?
Okay.
And then I also do a lot of game design and narrative sort of design classes there. I do a bunch of freelance design. I don't know if I can talk about what I'm doing now, but it's cool. I guarantee that, and we'll be on the market in March. And then I do a lot of freelance game design.
Awesome.
And
Very, very cool.
Yeah, there's a long, circuitous route that led me to all that stuff, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit.
I mean, hopefully, yeah. Well, I mean, the next part of the segment, now that we know who you are, is the Geek Out segment. So, without further ado, I think we need to Geek Out!
I did not see that coming. That's good.
All right, Brad. I talked to you a little bit about it. What do you want to geek out about today?
Okay, so I'm kind of a geek agnostic. You know, I go from this thing where I'm like, ooh, I want to learn how to soft boil an egg, and I'll geek out over that for like a month. And so I'm a very selective geekdom, and really my primary focus for geekdom is finding the threads that connect things.
Okay.
Okay.
And you know, if you look at my background and my work history, it's kind of it's super divergent. There's all this I'm all over the place. But it's the themes, the things that I have this general philosophy that's about creative process. If you can bake a cake, you could probably figure out how to build a car at some point. It's all about developing critical thinking skills, process skills, ability to evaluate things, and then learning the tools and the mechanics of your chosen discipline. That's where my primary focus of geekdom is, just figuring out how to make stuff.
That's fascinating.
And-
So
and then-
learning is your geekdom.
Learning is kind of my geekdom, but applied learning. Like, I suck at memorization. I was never good. I remember having this moment in college where I was walking across my campus, and I was like, why do I have like a 2.7 GPA? I was like, I think I'm smarter than this, but I'm not sure. And so I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to stop studying. That was my one-person revolution, fist in the air. I stopped studying. No studying! And then my grade point shot up.
Right.
And I realized I was just learning the wrong way. I was trying to learn the way people were telling me to learn, which didn't work for me. I'm better with ideas. I'm more like lateral concept things, language-based tasks, as opposed to memorization.
Sure.
And that was sort of the beginning of the sort of acknowledgement that I was like, ooh, now I kind of know who I am and how I can get things done more effectively for myself. and I try to help other people do the same.
You're a big-time game designer. When you go to your website, there's a huge list of things that come up. Some of them are labeled as concepts. Some of them, it's a lot of art direction. Like for Kong, Skull Island is on there.
That was great.
I was gonna say, like, I saw that. I was like, what? No way. Yeah, that's IP that you got to work with. One of the ones that I saw that I legitimately am going to buy because it's only on sale for 2 more days. Chicken.
Peter and I looked at the trailer
one?
together.
Chicken?
Chicken.
Oh, Chicken is a fantastic game.
Chicken looks amazing.
I really want to play that.
Yeah, that was a great game. A former coworker at Large Animal Games, Roman Resvin, who's actually he was consulting for a project that I'm working on, which is a book about the overlap between technology and spirituality.
Oh, wow.
And the difference between sort of like spiritual possession and hacking.
Okay. Oh.
And so I got Roman in. I bought him some Korean food down in K-Town, and we talked about this stuff. And then he was like, "Hey, by the way, I've got a project, which is it's this thing Chicken, where you're basically programming blocks of there's sort of sentient blocks of animals, and each block that composes an animal, and each animal is made of maybe a dozen different pieces: eyeballs, necks, backs, arms, legs, wings, tails, whatever." They actually all have their own little private chunk of AI. And you have this emergent behavior, animal behavior, because you might have an animal composed of, say, 12 different animal AIs, and its behavior then emerges where you might have even conflicting goals for body parts and all these kinds of things. It's pretty fascinating.
Absolutely hilarious. Like you might have, for instance, the part of an animal that might be a gorilla and wants to like forage for its food, but then like wings of something else
Totally.
that wants to like fly around, and so it can't really get to its food because it's flying around. That is actually a great premise for a game. That's why, and just the trailer in all,
The trailer is funny.
Fucking
because
ridiculous.
I mean it's like that David Attenborough, like, if you look here, we're going to see the chicken goat on the plains as it's rummaging around, and then it goes, and at one point it's like the chicken goatopus, and you just see this thing sprawled out on the beach. Like it's got a lot of
part
personality.
Chicken, part goat, part octopus.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Yeah, there's so much personality there. And it was fun working with this guy, Roman, because a lot of his personality is represented in the programming of these creatures.
Right.
Because for a game that's on Steam, it's available, it's legitimately really cool, and it's out there being played by bunches and bunches of people. He was kind of freestyling a lot of it. And you look at
a big release, and you're like, well, this is kind of what occurred to me in the moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And Roman, I don't want to hamstring your career or anything by admitting any of this stuff. But he was like, he started working on this thing, and this company gave him all this latitude. And it just sort of like flew in the face of standard game development process where you're like, okay, we're going to go through this phase and this phase. He would show up and he'd be like, okay, I had this thought last night. Let's try this. And they sort of blessedly gave him space to sort of design and develop from the gut, and I think it paid off. It's a cool game.
I want to play it. It clearly looks amazing, and yeah, talking about like the threads between things and saying screw studying like that. It's literally just like a true creative process genius. That sometimes you can't just go through the phase of like first doing the initial coding to make sure you have the mechanics, and then doing like reskinning. And it's just like do what you need to do.
Approach from the level that you want to see accomplished.
100%. I was talking to a group of students yesterday. And I was saying, it's all about finding your point of entry to an idea. And me, I'm kind of a bit of a hack as a programmer. And so I don't want to start with programming if I'm working on a game, because I know I'm just going to bang my head against
it from
the
start,
wall, and I'm just going to start frustrated. But I'm good at concept development and art direction. So I'll start with that. I'll give myself some wins for a week. And then I'll feel good about it. I'll feel confident. Be like, now I can handle some coding and some suffering. And then I'll do that. But it's all about finding your point of entry. Roman, his position, he would probably just start coding because that's where his aptitude is. And then he'll bring somebody else in to do the art.
So as far as this particular instance, what was your involvement? Like how much, say, did you have in the game development?
Very little, actually. It was in that gig was almost truly just like concept development.
Right.
They said, okay, here are the animal parts. Here's the things that we need to try and compose. We need to figure out like how big are the various blocks, neck blocks versus back blocks, and leg blocks and wing blocks. and what is the look and feel of this world.
Right.
And so,
Which Peter mentioned, kind of, it emulates a Minecraft, but like at a high textured Minecraft.
it is 100% influenced by Minecraft. And the idea is Minecraft, where you're building the world, this is the inverse. You're building the creatures that occupy the world. But yeah, Minecraft is totally an influence there.
Right.
Yeah, it was one of the first things that hit me was because you saw the thing where you're building the animals and I was like, that's so cool. It's a game that's totally up my alley. I just started playing Minecraft like this month, and it's a bad thing that I started playing it because I played with Legos nonstop as a kid, and talking about like how you approach things. Like I am such a conceptually I come at things and I just want to build and build and build and build and build. And when I'm done, I'm like, all right, so what do I have here? This is a thing where
what did I make?
Yeah, what did I make? Like I'm always like building and like thinking about how I'm gonna go about it. And so like in Minecraft, I've played maybe a hand like it's a little embarrassing. I've turned on the game maybe 4 times, and I have like this 3-story castle with it's beautiful and I love it, but like I'm trying to make sure we come back to the whole how you approach things because I do some freelance game design myself. Not a lot. I haven't been paid for it. It's all very very light stuff. I guess I'm more burgeoning than anything else. Anyways, so yeah, that's how I go at it. I start just picking at things and just building how like on one train of thought, and then sometimes I hit dead ends and I have to like reposition and go. But that's it's interesting that sorry.
Yeah, I love dead ends.
Dead ends are interesting.
I love dead ends and I love constraints. Like there's nothing, if I'm working on a project like a game or whatever it is, there's nothing I love more than the gift of somebody saying what this thing is, like what are the values it needs to sort of like embody and what it isn't. And I really love that. Like the thing I think I'm best at, like I'm a good artist, I'm a good designer, all this stuff. But I think the best thing I'm best at is probably negotiating design space, particularly when you hit a dead end and people are kind of like, well, now what? This thing we thought was going to work doesn't work as well as we thought it might. What do we do?
Right.
And I'm pretty good at negotiating from that position. So like, okay, what do we know? What do we don't know? And instead of all of us sitting in a room and deciding, well, this is the solution, let's identify what does a solution, what might it look like? And then go off into a cave and I'll try and explore solutions to that. Like I'm very much into the cave design mentality.
Right. The zone, the space zone.
The flow.
Yeah.
That also makes me think. I was I have a big boogeyman thing about Disney. I don't like Disney for various reasons. Mostly it's the big corporate attitude that it brings to art. I could go on for hours about that, but when you said that, it reflects an article I just read about Black Panther and their concept for costuming, and how like the costume designer came in and they really wanted a lot of African influence in what was happening, and it's beautiful design work. But she said there were specific parameters around things that she was designing.
Right, exactly. She's like, oh, a superhero costume needs to function in these very specific ways.
Right. Yeah. Hitting a dead end. Sometimes you're going to run into situations, any sort of designing where you're like, well, I need to build this thing like this, and it needs to have this, and you find yourself in a box, and it's coming up with those designs is freaking hard.
Yeah,
it's super hard. But like my personal language, I don't know if any other designers use this, but I think of them as enabling and restricting constraints. Like an enabling constraint would be something where it's like, oh, I have enough constraints that enable me to make design decisions and like I can develop forward momentum. And then the sort of restricting constraints, which is like when do all the constraints pile up such that all of a sudden I'm like in that box.
Right.
And whenever I find them in the box and I'm like, I'm frozen, then that's like my flag to myself to say like, okay, how can I step back and how can I start removing constraints until I can actually gain forward momentum again, wrap my head around potential solutions.
Can you think of a scenario like where, like a real life scenario where that actually happened to you? If not, totally understand. You've worked on hundreds of games and projects.
So I had this thing years ago. This is also sort of a revelation for me. I was working with a guy who's incredibly good at what he does. Just a great game designer, CEO of a company. He was a brilliant guy. I have nothing but admiration for him. And when I was working on this design, it was a user interface for a game. And at one point, I think I had a button that was like purple. And he was just like, let's not make that purple. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And I was like, why not purple? He's like, I just don't like purple. I was like, okay, well, what color do you like for a button? He was like, blue. I was like, oh, cool, interesting.
It's a few shades less.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, it's Roy G. Biv. It's just like one strata down, you know? And I was like, well, why blue? And because it's a constraint, but it was also an arbitrary constraint.
Right.
Kind of came out of left field.
Yeah. But he had an attachment to it. So I was like, well, this is interesting. I want to tease out what his attachment is. And in a totally professional, HR safe way.
Teasing,
of course.
definitely.
Yeah.
Teasing. Oh,
SFW.
Yeah. And so I was like, why blue? And he was like, I don't know. I just like blue. I was like, no, it's deeper than that. What does blue represent to you?
What did it mean in your family?
I felt really kind of hokey. Like,
Right.
it's like, artist manifesto time. Like,
Right.
blue is a representation of women.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, we do know that color, and through color therapy, we can look at colors and it generates a feeling. And for some reason, maybe the color purple resonated something negative with him.
100%. And since he was focused on, though he wasn't focused, he was very clear. He's like, purple, let's get rid of it and move on. I was like, okay, the conversation isn't about purple. It's going to be about blue. Because he's insisting on blue. And for me as a designer, I was like, well, now I feel like I'm in a box. This has to be blue, and I don't understand why. And so I was like, what does blue represent? And he was like, I don't know. It's just I like blue. And I was like, okay. I was like, when stepping back from blue, I was like, what do you think of when you think of blue? He's like, sky and water. I was like, oh, yeah, cool, me too. What about sky and water appeals to you? And he's like, oh, it's calming. I was like, cool. I was like, that's really helpful to me. Does that mean I have the room to design any solution for the screen that is calming, even if it doesn't mean using blue? And he was like, yeah, actually. My goal is not blue. My goal is calming. And it was interesting because you can kind of take this sort of negotiation of design space. That was like a really big moment for me. I was like, oh, I have so much power just to sort of like help people express what matters to them.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
for
the
sure.
first thing that came to mind.
I mean, but it's brilliant. Like, that's exactly what we were talking about. It's like, make it blue. Why blue?
Yeah, blue doesn't mean
Of
anything.
all the colors, like, sure, yes, blue, orange color combination is the most attractive for the eye, so movies love using it. Great, cool. I get that. But, like, yeah, I love that because I don't know the color, like, I don't know all the circumstances around this button. I just love that it's like, why are we doing why? And so, yeah, making a calming screen fulfills the exact same purpose.
Yeah, and there are tons of ways. A million tangents you could take to make something relaxing or calming. Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting that he approached you without really mentioning it in context. He didn't say, well, I don't think really purple works for this aesthetic. I don't think purple works for the time period that this game is taking place in or the reach that we're trying to do here. He specifically just didn't want that color purple. And you needed to, and you said, okay, well, you didn't give me a reason, so there must be a reason. That's not a surface level, like, doesn't work with the aesthetics, doesn't work with the design, has something else to do. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I find very often, unless you're working with somebody who's exceptional, and they're like, whatever, they think about this stuff. Like, this is what they nerd out about. They don't always have the vocabulary because they've developed some other expertise.
Right.
And so as a developer or designer, my job is to sort of figure this stuff out, help them better articulate what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Tease it out.
Tease it out.
In a completely SFW
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, of course.
So this actually makes me think. I just saw a fun article about doing everything the client wants in a photoshopping advertising gig. And it was hilarious.
Oh, that's
At the
fantastic.
end product. Like, it was a picture of a girl holding it was cheese. Like, holding the cheese product. And, like, it was a fine photo with the product placement, everything like that. And they did, like, again, every single thing that was asked, they did for the Photoshop. Clearly, I don't think they gave the client it, but they did it just as, like, a proof of thing. And, like, in the end, because they were like, well, we need it to be more natural, so we can have, like, a farm setting, but also, like, city because it's popular, and we need, like, the internet present, and we need, like, all of these things kept piling. I was like, this doesn't even, what?
Right.
And so the final product is this hilariously, like, over-grinning girl holding the cheese in a way that's, like, close enough to her mouth. They dyed her hair yellow so it was more cheesy. These animals were literally, like, running around this farm, like, full speed. There was, like, literally aliens abducting something. Like, it was one of the funniest pictures I've ever seen because it was the idea of, as a designer, not doing what you did and literally just giving the client what they wanted.
But was that the experiment? They were like, okay, as an exercise, this is what we're going to do because we know it's ridiculous.
Right, yeah,
Okay,
that was the entire thing. It was, what if all of those requests come in without dissecting them, without asking, what is it going to look like if we just do it all? That's right. There was even some guy in the background with wine. Like they put in just a new person with wine because you can pair cheese with wine, so we want to have like wine and stuff like that. And so it's gotta be classy.
Geez.
Yeah, because the audience wouldn't know unless you visualized it for them.
Right. There's no suggestivity. This reminds me very much, and I'm sure our audience will know this, of that Photoshop troll on the internet that you see everywhere.
The guy who he gives you exactly what you don't want.
Well, you ask for something, but because you ask in specifically, he'll take it to the dramatic level.
Oh yeah, I've seen this.
It's great. Yeah. Like, oh, can you make my boyfriend a little bit taller? Because I look really tall next to him, and he's like, sure, no problem. And he delivers the final product, and her boyfriend is stretched to like 8 feet tall or something ridiculous. It's great.
Hey, can you make it like a girl taking a picture where like she's supposed to be holding something? Can you make it look like I'm holding the island? So instead of moving anything else, it's like the shoulders just put down to the hip level. So funny.
It's pretty brilliant.
I love that. I hope this person's making their career doing that.
Yeah.
I hope somehow they're getting paid to do that.
I hope someone saw his work and said, I want to hire you to be as ridiculous as you currently are.
Just do what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point he has to, because it is the same guy. Like it is really the same. He's very clear that I am the one doing this. So he's a professional for like editor and stuff like that. Like, and I really hope that he gets the creative chance to be able to just take what he wants to the extreme. But I'm sure that he's making money doing like professional level stuff.
And I wonder at what point did that turn the corner? Like, was he where he was being cheeky, and then it became a thing? And then people were sending him requests, like waiting to see how he was going to mess with their ideas. Like at some point, it turned the corner.
Yeah, I'm sure, because I mean, I think he started doing it because so many people were asking for free edits,
right? And
so he was just like, sure, here, this is what you asked for. Pay me if you want something better. And then I'm sure that it's I'm gonna message that guy. I want to see my arm in a weird place.
Exactly. Yeah. So just bringing it back to games, we had talked a little bit about. Talking about some bigger AAA releases in video games specifically, and just getting your opinion on how would you describe your experience with like the current video game industry? Extensive? Are you more of like a indie designer?
I do know that based on your website. There's a lot of like mobile stuff. I saw a Facebook app that you worked on. Yeah. Like there is a lot of indie level app level stuff. Right. We were just curious as to exactly what your experience is.
I would say most of my experience is indie games.
Okay.
The past 15, 16 years or so, like as a small developer, when this company Large Animal started, like you just couldn't really get into console development. I mean, still now it's a big ask to be like, we're going to start a new AAA development studio. So we just targeted small indie games. Sure. And we did that for 15 or 16 years. In that time, I think we made like 130 games. Wow. And it's the crazy thing is every 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, the market shifts. So the platforms changed. We started doing client games and PC downloadable games. And then we took some of those games and actually put them on Xbox Live. And then we started doing Facebook games were a huge thing, and which kind of thankfully has died away.
Oh, thank God.
Then mobile, but now mobile is such an incredibly brutal market to get into. I was talking to a guy the other day. I wonder if I can say this. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna do it.
I mean, we won't say no.
So I have this habit, and this is a total tangent, but I have this habit. It's like whenever I'm teaching a class, I have the first assignment I give my students is like, I want you to identify 10 people whose work you love, and contact them, say who you are, what you love about what they do, what you do, thank them for doing what they do, and that's it. Don't ask for anything. And it's sort of built on a practice that I do. And so I'm always reaching out to game developers and artists and musicians and people and saying, like, you're awesome. Here's why I think you're awesome. Thank you. And I did that recently with this guy, David Hohusen, who is I think he's the game design director for Dots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mobile game.
Oh, okay.
Play Dots and Dots & Co. Yeah. I'm totally a Dots junkie. And he got back to me. We ended up talking and we did stuff. And for crying out loud, what was I talking about?
Reaching out, saying, I just like what you do. We were talking about your development in the game industry, something about AAA games. I think we lost the train of thought.
Well, it was like how... you give this assignment to your students. You reach out,
right, and it's sort of like the change in the industry. So I was talking to him. I was like, well, how is it that you guys had such an amazing game in Dots that it just blew up overnight? I was like, did you just have support from Apple? Is that what did it?
What was the secret to success?
Yeah. He's like, we made a solid game. He's like, but we had a lot of money to put towards marketing.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, so
Reach.
opening day, we just had like 1 million downloads. Don't quote me on that number, but it was like an absurd amount of downloads because they had the funds to then reach out to people, and it was a good enough game that those people stuck around.
Yeah.
And now for indie developers, the idea of having hundreds of thousands of dollars, like maybe half of your development cost or equal to your development cost to then market the game on the day it launches, it's just not untenable. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
so now you've got like Itch, and you've got all these other places for indie game developers to just like make their thing, share it, and maybe make a buck.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, like you said, it's super competitive industry, and you can't break into it just the way that you couldn't break into AAA games or can't break into AAA games like as a whole new entity. It's become a different kind of beast and environment. So I think a big platform now, especially on your website, we saw Steam. That's a big thing too. What would you say is a good place for people to start if they had wanted to get into game design, they wanted to have somewhere that they can reach or put their talent to use? Where is a good market to break into?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I would say there was a lot of really good sort of small to medium size game development studios. There's probably I can think of a half dozen around New York City off the top of my head. There's all these new markets. Like I'm fascinated by museums, and the museum space right now is really into exploring game mechanics, and that's where a lot of my work is happening right now.
Really? Oh,
yeah. Because you're creating a new market. You're not competing with all these other people who already own that space. So I find that an interesting space to start because they don't know either. So you're in this sort of glorified position of educating people about maybe like this is how games could work in your space, and they're just psyched to hear how that could work, and so they're really receptive. But then I would say like anywhere you can publish your games, like Itch or Steam, sharing your games. And the thing that I always tell people is just to go meet the people who are doing what you want to do.
Sure, that's a big thing.
Yeah, if you're a AAA studio, they've got their their applicant tracking system, their ATS system. It's so dialed in that, and they're getting thousands of, I'm a character designer and I want to work for Blizzard. Okay, cool. They got 1,000 other resumes that week,
and it's all processed through a machine and a program, picking out your keywords from your resume, and just if they have an opening, you might be one of 1,000. It depends.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm a big fan of going to events, meeting people face to face, be memorable.
Sure.
It's also amazing to me whenever I do go to events where people will start, or even people who have responded to a job application that we've posted as a company who have never bothered playing games that the company has made.
Right.
And it's amazingly efficient when you're interviewing somebody and you can say like, hey, tell me a game you played that we made and what you liked about it and what you didn't like about it. And 80% of them are like, I haven't played any of your games. And you're like, well, cool, thank you for your time. And you're,
Bye.
Bye. So play the games for the place that you want to go to,
I mean, I thought that was a given. Like, I don't know. I at one point was going to I was going to go into video game programming, and the short form of the story is I went to a summer camp. It was supposed to be this awesome 2 weeks of programming. I was going to come out with my own version of Asteroids. It was great. I did come out with my own version of Asteroids, but I was never going to do video game programming again because not a single person in that room said another word to another person in that room the entire 2 weeks. Ooh. And I'm a social person, as we can tell, because I'm doing an interview-based talk show right now. It was torture. Like I didn't mind the coding. I loved the creative element of like making my ships avatars and making I had the asteroids would drop power-ups and I loved my version of Asteroids. But I'm never gonna go back. I knew I could never go into the pits because it was so painful to not have anybody communicate with me.
That is a little strange. Yeah, I mean, game developers in general. I mean, you could almost see there's this caste system based on sort of their role within the development studio. Yeah. There's the cliche about biz dev people. They're gonna be like, hey, game designers are sort of categorized based on are they a statistician? Are they coming more to game design from storytelling?
Right.
And so they've got their own particular kind of nerddom. And then programmers, there's all kinds of wonderful glorious colors of programmers and personality types.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean it's anybody that works on a AAA game that's being paid to do several, I know that it has to be categorized. You were working on the coding for this particular animation for this particular mechanic.
Yeah, we want you to dial in that jump.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how mind melting that is.
Yeah.
hats off to them, because if it goes wrong, you have the Skyrim jump or the Elder Scrolls jump, where it's just kind of like a weird float with a hop.
Yeah.
That is why when you say you should meet the people that are doing what you want to do. I want to meet the people who made the game Goat. Because that Goat Simulator, that is. Have you heard of this, Peter?
I've heard of it. I've never played it. Though.
This is a quick rundown of what Goat is, and Brent, I'm sure you're familiar. Goat was a game where the developers tried to make a literal, real-world simulation of you being a goat, but they didn't fix any of the bugs, and they approached it from the loosest perspective ever. What resulted is a now cult favorite game where the mechanics are stupid, and like if you press the wrong jump key, your goat will shoot forward into the next city and like knock over 10 people. It is ridiculous, but possibly the best thing ever.
So I just Googled the Goat Simulator game, and their disclaimer of the game is quite funny. It says...
Yeah, we have to read this out loud. This is great.
Goat Simulator is a small, broken, and stupid game. It was made in a couple of weeks, so don't expect a game in the size and scope of GTA with goats. In fact, you're better off not expecting anything at all, actually. To be completely honest, it would be best if you spend your $10 on a hula hoop, a pile of bricks, or maybe a real-life goat.
That's fantastic. I wonder... Oh man, it would have been fun to sit down with that group of people, or whatever, the two people who made that, over the 2 weeks, and just like to have been part of the conversation. Like, what did they expect was going to happen with that thing? Yeah. Like, were they just like, "Hey, we're throwing away a couple weeks of our lives," and then this thing actually develops this cult status, and they're like,
became
"Hey,
huge!
What a fantastic, pleasant surprise!"
Oh yeah.
Well, or did they know that they had some secret sauce?
Well, it's interesting because this makes me think of both Fez and we haven't play tested this game. Two games on like polar opposite ends of different spectrums. Because Fez, I remember it was in development for like something like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it was a long, painful labor.
But it was one guy.
It was
just the one guy.
Just long and painful, and he trying so hard. And I remember fans just got pissed at him, just what are you doing? And a similar thing, No Man's Sky. One guy working forever on this game, and it came out and was just not what people wanted.
Yeah.
All the way over to we haven't played tested this game, which is this, in my opinion, stupid card game.
It's actually great. Okay, so the name of the game is We Haven't Play Tested This at All. And the objective of it's a card game.
I like it already.
The objective of the game is to win. This is how it's stated in the rules. And if you do not win, you have in fact lost. And that's it. Apart from that, all you have to do is follow the instructions on the cards that you're dealt. It starts with very basic rules. I'm basically doing a plug for this game, I just realized. But
I'm sold.
It's great. So you dish out 2 cards to everybody. Everybody reads the cards and follows the instructions on their cards, which one of them is as simple as you win as soon as you play this card. But somebody else in your party might have a card that says repeal or something like that, where when someone plays a you win card, you win instead. And then there's another card that says anyone who points at another player for the rest of the game loses. And so you have to start keeping track of that. And then there's another one where you can't say him, her, or they. It builds on itself, and it's absolutely hilarious.
See, the reason I didn't enjoy it is because both of the times I've tried to play it, I lost within 1 turn.
That's the beauty of it.
It's not fun
for Peter. Everybody else had a blast.
I have never had fun with that game so far. So who knows? Maybe if there is a time that I actually get involved where I get to do those things, it would be fun. But I mean that's one of the trade-offs is they haven't play tested it. So there are going to be times that people go, well, this is stupid because
At least your expectations are managed.
Right? Yeah. I went into it knowing this is an unplay tested game.
You paid $10 for something that you knew you didn't know what was coming out of. So
It's like buying a mystery box on eBay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Have you played Curses?
I have not played Curses.
I haven't heard of it.
No.
Great game. Have you ever played Kings?
I have played Kings.
Yeah.
Okay, so this company is sort of what's that? The drinking game.
Yeah, I've played that.
It's I could never remember the rules because I'm drinking.
Right. That's usually how it ends.
Yeah,
ends
it's
up,
like
right?
euchre. I would never remember the rules of euchre the
I
following
love
morning.
euchre.
Please teach me how because I can't remember because I've never learned sober.
See, I'm from Wisconsin. I know sheep's head over euchre, and so I've gotten into some like sheep's head's better euchre.
See, I have no idea what sheep's head is, but being from Ohio, trying to find people that know how to play euchre is really hard.
We should have like a head-to-head sort of sheep's because I don't know what sheep's head is. Sheep's head euchre playoff.
Man. Yeah, I think so. That would be fun. Anyway, sorry.
So Curses is a simplified, formalized version of Kings.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's kind of like, it seems like it builds up sort of like this. We haven't play tested this game, and that you're just doing ridiculous things. I think last time I played, I had my hands had to remain in contact with my head at all times, but I'm also had to draw cards, and I had to like clap at one point. And if you're drinking and having fun with friends, it's the absurdity is what it's all about. Like I've played it half a dozen times. I think we've finished one game,
Right.
but it's not about finishing the game.
Oh no, it's similar to Quelf. Like by the time you get to the end of Quelf, you're
done.
You're done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this was the half an hour of the time that we had to geek out with you.
Good
so
grief.
Technically, your time to geek out is done, but that does not mean the conversation is over. We're now at the plus 10 EXP moment where we get to. It's our time now.
Ooh,
we're gonna
nice.
talk to you about whatever we want to talk about.
Go for it. I want to hear. I want to learn.
Okay, Brittany, take it away.
So Peter brought up Quelf, and I love Quelf. Peter actually introduced me to it, and I recently got my own Quelf board for Christmas, and the design and all of the production value has greatly decreased. And I was wondering what your thoughts on that were.
I heard this.
Oh, I hadn't seen that.
I heard this. Someone, I don't know if it was you, Peter, but someone else had mentioned that more recent editions have kind of dumbed down Quelf.
Yes.
I hadn't seen that, no.
You've played Quelf?
Yeah,
So
but I
great.
don't know anything about like this dumbing
Yeah,
down.
No,
so like there's Mrs. Picklefeather and the Platypus and Super Ninja Monkey, Mr. Lugnut. I know this game way too well, apparently. All of that great stuff. In
I
the
have
new
colored
version,
pawns.
In the new they're just pawns.
They're just pawns.
Oh,
and
they
my
take away the
board
character?
is, you know how, Peter, your board folds out and everything?
Yeah.
Mine is just one solid, small, tiny little square.
What?
Yeah.
Is it still like the Yellow Brick Road of Doom?
Yes, but it's just like how you have like it folds out and then you cut in it and it's like a full like game board.
game board,
Mine's
right.
like one square of that. It's tiny.
Whoa.
So it's
like a travel edition or something.
Yeah.
Right, I feel like-
it's meant to be a shorter game because you have less squares to travel, maybe.
Is it the same number of squares at least?
I think so.
So-
And the rules are all the same.
So why? I guess that's a really good question. Yeah, why would a company who has brilliant art design, beautiful, wacky, like a freaking culture of a game, decide to remove that?
That I have no idea. I mean, the only thing I could think of is they did some sort of play testing where they're like, you know what, our new players don't care, and so let's save money.
Yeah.
But that just doesn't seem to make sense.
Sounds like they did
I
some
don't-
kind of like focus group and they
Yeah.
got the wrong group of people in the room. or
Right,
something like
exactly.
that,
No,
right?
actually, our players like the weirdness and the idiosyncrasy.
Right.
I don't know why you would make that decision to sort of dumb down a successful product.
Yeah.
Sure. The fact that it's smaller, I understand. Like maybe, like you said, it might be the travel edition or something like that. But it's not marketed that way. It's not like Quelf on the Go or Quelf to Go or anything like that. It's just this is the only version of Quelf that you can now get.
Yeah.
And we touched base about this earlier. It's similar in some respects to larger game designs and Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, that has multiple editions. So they want to make it more accessible to more people. But there are differences. Surely, something as ridiculous as a board game like Quelf lives on those idiosyncrasies, lives on all the randomness of it. So you shouldn't take a core element away from it.
The only thing I can think of, which I still think is a bad idea, is localization.
Also true.
If they were saying, hey, we need to strip out all the things that are specifically kind of Western and American because we're going to sell this game now in the Philippines
Sure.
or China
Yep.
or someplace where people don't have an association, like the idiosyncrasies backfire on a new target audience.
Right.
Maybe, but it's still, I don't know. I don't even really buy that. I'm straining to figure it out.
I mean, the only thing that we already touched on it. The only thing that makes sense to me is make it more mainstream. Like some executive marketer was like, it's too wacky, like it's too indie, it's too weird. We gotta make sure that anyone can pick this game up and play it.
Sure.
Like that's what it sounds like, but it sits wrong in my soul.
Right. Well, I mean, there's as far as my experience goes, there are moments when if you're trying to make accessibility, if that becomes a priority in your design and you're trying to invite more of a market, there's a fine line between simplifying the mechanics but still achieving the same result versus removing content. And I feel like something that would be a good example of it. So for D&D, for instance, I think that was well done. I've played several editions of the past. I'm now playing the most recent one. I've noticed that Dungeons and Dragons in 5th edition, they take away some aspects of the game that kind of overcomplicated it in previous editions and have streamlined it. That's one thing. Versus World of Warcraft, where, for instance, I was a huge World of Warcraft gamer, but they took away mechanics like you now press a button and you have a campfire rather than getting the flint and the wood. Well, that kind of was part of the immersion of the game, was letting you do that kind of stuff. Yes, there's more stuff to distract you now. There's more content in other places, but you've now removed core elements from it that make it more accessible to a larger audience, but you're not supporting your loyalty either.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's something like the sort of the grind of collecting campfire material is just sort of like, will everybody else who's gone through that looks at the new players like, oh,
Yeah.
you don't deserve to be here.
Right.
So-
right. And there's a lot of that culture. So I started playing in one expansion, and a lot of the people say, "Oh, you never know how hard it would have been, or how easy you have it." You know, this is
Back in my day.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that happens everywhere. For the show Batsu, like I've been doing that show. I don't even know, but since 2012, so this is the 6th year that I've been doing this show.
You
now.
actually do know. Okay.
I did
had it in
I did the
there.
math. I did the math. Okay, but like the starting off, we say all the time, like we were happy to have like 12 to 20 people in the audience, and like I, as the side staff character, I was doing all of the side, like it was a much harder thing, and these new young whippersnappers that come in like 2 years, like
And we complained about
and you
65 audience.
you complain
it's
about
a
it.
low night.
Yeah, oh, only 50 people in the audience tonight. I'm like,
How can I find the energy?
Yeah.
you guys have no idea. It's I think that
couldn't Peter's day.
I mean that happens everywhere, but
Yeah, of course. Yeah, in many things.
I mean, but that's also different. Mechanically, I can see where it's like if enough people are saying, I don't want to collect flint for firewood, I just want to have a fire. Like I see that for a
Sure,
game like
sure.
World of Warcraft. For immersion, like
This was, to be fair, this was the simplest example I could pull. I could pull you
there
like
are-
why the boss battles have changed dramatically, where now it's all about don't stand in the fire versus like the tactics of 3 or 4 years ago that made that a much more immersive game. So
Right.
I picked up a very simple example, but
well, I have my own thing I kind of wanted to just ask your brain about.
Geek out.
This deals with difficulty curve. I was originally going to ask about Monster Hunter, but I don't really want to anymore. Have you heard of XCOM?
I have, but I've never played XCOM.
Please don't. It's the reason I say that is I love tactics games. I play like Final Fantasy Tactics, Fire Emblem. I love those turn-based tactics games.
Yeah.
But there's always a logic behind what happens. XCOM and people that love XCOM, they love it because of this, and it just infuriates me. I can't do it. It is so hard that it's almost impossible to play, and like most people lose the game, and like that's why when they made XCOM 2, the story was that aliens had taken over, and it's still just as difficult, and it's like to the point and I find that breaks in logic where like if somebody's standing on the ground and I have somebody on a 3rd-story building like 5 spaces back, I do not find it logically or tactically interesting, and it just boggles my mind that it's okay for people that this person will shoot through a wall and then shoot through the ceiling and then shoot through a wall and then shoot through another ceiling and land a critical hit, instantly killing my guy.
well, that doesn't make sense. But hold on, I have
That's
to
XCOM.
I have to ask a point of clarification. So I've never played XCOM. I've seen it very briefly in some things. I bought it for a friend of mine who really liked it. I bought 2 for a friend of mine, and he showed me what the game was about. And it was basically like Marines versus aliens, right?
Yeah.
What was 1 about if the aliens hadn't taken over?
It was the invasion.
Oh, it was the invasion. Oh, I see. So then it becomes more like
Yeah.
the resistance.
So the question here is, in terms of emergent, in terms of game design, why would you continue to press a difficulty curve like that?
You know, they're just huge fans of games like Dark Souls, Ninja Gaiden. They're these games that are just like
damn ninja games.
right.
Oh.
This is what they do. They supply this kind of like just impossible task where failure is just built into the process. And so for that person who's willing to slog through hours of mastery, sort of memorizing the sequence of movements that you need to do to take down a boss, there's enormous pride and loyalty in that.
There's a market for it.
Absolutely.
My personal experience, since we're geeking out and I'm allowed to do this, my personal experience with Ninja Gaiden was I played for about the first 8 hours of it. This was the one that had come out for the Xbox. So it was like their first newer console release, original Xbox.
Was that Ninja Gaiden Black? Was that the one that they made easier for people?
No. I think it was Ninja Gaiden. Like they had restarted the franchise because it had come out in like a side scroller, I think originally or something like that. And it came out for the original Xbox, and I think it was just called Ninja Gaiden. So it might have been like a reboot of it. But I remember playing about a few hours of it and finding it so difficult that I got to the first boss fight, and she blasted through a window in a church and landed in front of me, and I looked at her and was like, nope, and I shut off the game because I knew.
Tapped out.
Yeah, I knew. I maybe I gave it a minute, but I knew that from the get-go, I had troubles with the minions. I did not have the time or energy into putting it into this boss, but things like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, I've been a big fan of since they started coming out, so I've been playing those, and I don't know if it's just as a gamer, one matures and finds the challenges that they remember from their past interesting and they want to engage with it more, or if that's just a different kind of difficulty curve.
This is not some high level understanding of the industry or anything, but my friends who are really into Dark Souls, and I'm not. I appreciate it, but I don't get sucked into those kinds of games.
Smart.
Yeah, right. I want to minimize my head banging against walls and throwing of console controllers. But they love the world.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm willing to kind of like suffer through this, develop a sense of mastery, because I think a lot of the really good games, and which is one of the reasons why we don't like games where just random results happen, and you're like, why did I lose? How come that guy shot me through 5 buildings?
Right.
It doesn't make sense. If you can develop some sort of sense of agency and mastery, then that's you're locked in. And games like that where you feel like you've worked to develop mastery, but it's in a nice world and it's got something compelling
the story
about it.
brings
It
you in.
draws you in. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, I do have to end our conversation now. We're at the 47-minute mark. Like, it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming in today, Brad.
It's been my pleasure.
This
Thank
has
you for
been
having
awesome.
me.
Thank you.
Really quickly, I hope you guys leveled up today. I know I got enough GXP too. So signing off again. I'm Peter the Geek.
I am GMJC.
I'm Brittles.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.
All right, boom.
Dude, that was awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to our show. If you liked Geek XP, help us out by becoming a contributor on our Patreon. We have bonus content, raffles, and more at patreon.com/yourgeekxp. Geek XP is recorded live at Face Off Unlimited headquarters in Astoria, Queens, and was edited by Peter Hargard. Executive producers are Joe Tex, Jay Painter, and Eric Robinson. FOU Studios is a property of Face Off Unlimited, LLC. I'm Peter Hargarden, the senior producer of podcasts here, and on behalf of everyone who worked on the show, we'd like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Subscribe to catch all of our other podcasts here on the FOU Studios Podcast Network. To connect with the geeks, follow us at YourGeekXP on Facebook and Twitter. To learn more about FOU, connect with us via social media at FOU Studios and visit us at FOUstudios.com. Boom!